Welcome everyone, this is your host Abraham L. Jack. You are a professional game master. First of all, this channel is proudly sponsored by the Crueltide Pocket Rulebook Kickstarter. In this tabletop RPG, Santa Claus has been captured and you need to rescue him by role-playing as any sort of fantasy creature imaginable. You could be a human with holiday powers, perhaps one of Santa's helpers, an elf, maybe a talking reindeer, or perhaps a gingerbread a gingerbread cookie golem. It's up to you to restore the holiday cheer. Check out those stretch goals. This channel is also proudly sponsored by Dead Tree Studios, the publishers and developers of Dames of Asstoria, a tabletop role-playing game where you play as monster girls experiencing high adventure in a world that doesn't fully accept them. They have also released the Pay What You Want tabletop RPG Daughters of Lamb, where you get to play as cybernetic nuns with guns, looking for the missing pieces of their AI god. This channel is also proudly sponsored by the Red Room Publishing. Please check out their store for exclusive tabletop RPG products and check out their free tabletop RPG, the Red Roleplaying Game, a generic system that is able to handle any sort of theme, genre, flavor, setting that you can think of. Definitely check it out. You will find all of the links for these products in the description and in the pinned comment as well. Today, I continue my review series featuring Machine Gods of the Noxian Expanse. If you haven't seen the other parts of this review series, featuring this post-apocalyptic feudal tabletop RPG that you can play without a game master, as a solo experience or with your friends, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about combat. Combat is carried out in rounds, and each round everybody takes their turn. A round lasts an average of 10 seconds. Before battle begins, perhaps one side surprised the other. You can determine this via context or perhaps an opposed check, maybe dexterity versus perception, or intelligence versus dexterity. It depends on how the ambush is carried out. The surprised side cannot act during that first turn, only the surprising side. But then, from then on, initiative is determined every round. This is done by rolling a d20 and adding your initiative modifier. Non-player characters and other sorts of creatures don't roll. That is, hostile and non-hostile NPCs. Instead, they have a fixed initiative score that is always used. Combat is then resolved in turns with participants taking actions from highest initiative to the lowest. Initiative is rolled again at the start of every round. It must be important. I must put emphasis on this, rather. It is very important to remember that. When it comes to the combat range bands or zones, there are three: engaged or melee, nearby, and far away. That is it. So combat is quite abstract. You could use miniatures if you wanted to, but I think it is much better to use your mind's eye with this game. You should always use your mind's eye, but here miniatures are unnecessary. When combat starts, combatants are always far away. That is 2 zones away from your enemy. Unless one side has managed to surprise the other, in which case the surprising side can choose their starting range. When it comes to actions, all characters and creatures can make one of each of the different types of actions. There are 3 in total during a combat round. You have the free action, which could be speaking a few words, dropping an item, swapping weapons. They cost nothing, but it's just one free action per round. You have one move action, which is pretty self-explanatory, changing position during the fight, but you can only switch to a nearby zone or region. So if you are engaged in melee, you can only move nearby to another creature. If you wanted to get to a creature that is far away, then you need to do something else. This is where the standard combat action takes place. The standard action, this is your main action. Could be attacking, could be using some sort of specialized gear, casting a spell, and so forth. The standard combat action could be a standard attack, a maneuver, there are plenty of maneuvers here. You have charging, creating openings, disarming, grappling, pushing, etc. They usually involve applying a bonus or a penalty. For example, in the case of charge, you move an extra range. That is a great way to approach your target, but your DR, and I think this is an error because here it says DR, but you don't know what DR is, and they only explain it later on in the book. A DR is defense rating. So you can charge and cover a lot of ground, but your DR is reduced by -2 for the whole round. And so it applies to the other combat maneuvers. In the case of push, you attack as normal, and if you hit, you can make a strength versus strength check to push your target from engaged to nearby or into some sort of hazard. So all of these different maneuvers are very simple to handle. It's always either like a modifier or an opposed check sometimes. You can also cast spells, and we will cover spells in the next part of this review series. You can disengage, or you can use an item. When it comes to disengaging, you must pass a dexterity versus dexterity check. If you are engaged at the same time with several opponents possessing different dexterity values, only make a single check against the highest one. A success means the character can move away freely to a different range, but failing means they aren't going anywhere. When it comes to the attack check, this is very simple as well. You roll a d20 and modify the roll by your strength or dexterity modifier depending on the weapon used, plus any other relevant modifiers, such as certain items, circumstances, etc. If the result is equal to or higher than the target's defense rating, or DR, then they have scored a hit and dealt damage. When a PC deals damage, the PC must roll the weapon's damage and add your strength modifier for melee weapons or dexterity modifier for ranged weapons. When it's the turn of the non-player characters or monsters to attack, you do not roll dice as a game master for the monsters or the non-player characters, etc. Instead, the target player character rolls a d20 plus the defense rating and compares that result to the attacker's attack value. If the result is equal to or higher than the attacker's attack, you have avoided the strike. But if the result is lower than the attacker's attack, then you are hit and you take damage. The amount of damage suffered is always detailed on the stat block for the creatures attacking, or in the case of player characters, it depends on their weapon. When it comes to critical hits, when player characters roll a natural 1 when performing an attack action, you have critically missed the target. So something happened to your weapon or weapons. You need to spend your next standard action picking it back up because it's too far away from you. Or maybe you can use a free action to draw a different weapon, so it pays to have several weapons on you. When a player character rolls a natural 1 when defending from an enemy's attack, this means that their attacker has managed to strike a critical hit. This deals double damage to you. If on the other hand a player character rolls a natural 20 when performing an attack, then you have struck a vital area. It's a critical hit. The damage is doubled. And when a player character rolls a natural 20 when defending from an enemy's attack, this means that the attacker has managed to critically miss. The attacker either drops the weapon if the enemy is wielding one, or the attacker injures himself or itself, depending on the creature, right? There are some very strange creatures. So maybe the natural weapon injured the body from where it came out, if it has like a tentacle with a spike at the end. Or perhaps you found an opening and did a quick strike. Whatever the case, the opponent takes damage when you roll a natural 20 when defending. You can also dual wield. When a player character wields two one-handed weapons simultaneously, one in each hand, your defense rating, the target's defense rating, is shifted up. This means it's harder to hit the target. But if you are successful when hitting the target, you deal an additional d6 of damage per attack. You can also fight unarmed, but you usually deal only d4 of damage, unless you take the Brawler feat, which increases this to d8. When it comes to death and healing, when a player character, non-player character, monster, etc. reaches 0 health, they are dead. A character can make a hard intelligence check to attempt to heal another character or creature, or even themselves if they are not unconscious. If successful, the injured character recovers 1d4 health plus the Constitution modifier. This can only be done once per day though, and requires medical supplies. After a meal and a full night's rest, characters regain lost health equal to d8 plus their Constitution modifier. Resting at a safe haven for 3 or more days restores all lost health. There are also various conditions such as bleeding, blinded, burning, poisoned, restrained, starved, that apply various penalties or modifiers to you. In the case of bleeding, you are constantly suffering damage. In the case of being blinded, then it's harder. It's harder to make your actions, to take your actions, strike the opponent. In the case of poison, of course, you're going to be suffering the effects of that toxin, and so forth. And this concludes this part of the review series. In the next part, we are going to talk about magic and spellcasting, because this is a science fantasy tabletop RPG. Magic here is quite technological. When it comes to combat, it is very easy to carry out, but I must point out that this is more on the old school side of combat. You will see this when we talk about the different weapons, or rather, later on, when I cover some of the other aspects of the game, you will see that this is very old school because of the different tables, the resolution. Many of the weapons do not have several rules or traits. You just have the description of the weapon, the damage, the cost. So for someone that is not used to old school style of combat, you may look at the longbow and the composite bow, and you might be thinking, why is the composite bow more expensive if it deals the same damage as the normal bow? But because it's composite, this means that you can carry out some crazy, perhaps long distance shots that will only be accomplished with the composite bow. So it's that sort of gameplay. If you take a look at various weapons, you need to consider how you could employ them in combat and apply the relevant bonuses or circumstances. Thank you for watching this part of the review series. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, consider joining as a member using the Super Thanks button. Take a look at the information in the description and in the pinned comment. This has been your host, Abraham L. Jaguar, a professional game master, and remember, in tabletop role-playing games, you are not having a conversation about your characters. You are experiencing the game world as your characters. Once again, thank you and see you later.